The Sibylline Oracles, Book 8. As the great wrath comes upon the disobedient world, I show forth the wrath of God to the last age, prophesying to all men, city by city. From the time when the tower fell and the tongues of men were divided into many dialects of mortals, first the Egyptian kingdom, then that of the Persians, Medes, Ethiopians, and Assyrian Babylon, then that of Macedonia, which boasted in great arrogance, then fifth, the famous lawless kingdom of the Italians, last of all, will show many evils to all men, and will expend the toils of the men to all the earth. It will lead untiring kings of nations to the west, and will legislate for all peoples and subdue all things. The mills of God grind fine flour, though late. And then fire will destroy everything and reduce to fine dust the heads of lofty mountains and of all flesh. The beginning of evils for all will be love of gain and folly, for there will be a desire for deceitful gold and silver. For there is nothing that mortals prefer to these, not the light of the sun, not heaven, not sea, nor the broad earth whence everything grows, nor God, who gives everything, begetter of all. Nor did they prefer faith and piety to these. It is the source of impiety and forerunner of disorder, deviser of wars, hostile troubler of peace, which alienates parents from their children and children from their parents. Even marriage will never be wholly honored apart from gold. Earth will have boundaries, and all the sea guards craftily divided amongst those who have gold. As if wishing to have the much nurturing earth forever, they will ravage the poor, so that they themselves may acquire additional land and subject them to imposture. If the huge earth did not have its throne far from the starry heaven, men would not have equal light, but it would be marketed for gold and would belong to the rich, and God would have prepared another world for beggars. One day, proud Rome, there will come upon you from above an equal heavenly affliction, and you will first bend the neck and be razed to the ground, and fire will consume you altogether. Laid low on your floors, and wealth will perish, and wolves and foxes will dwell in your foundations. Then you will be utterly desolate, as if you had never been. Where then will be the palladium? What sort of God will save you? One of gold, or stone, or bronze? Or where then will be your senatorial decrees? Where the race of Rhea, or Kronos, or Zeus, and of all those whom you revered? Lifeless demons, likelessness of dead corpses, whose tombs ill-fated Crete will have as a boast, worshipping senseless corpses with ritual enthronements. But when, luxurious one, you have had 15 kings who enslaved the world from east to west, there will be a grey-haired prince with the name of a nearby sea, inspecting the world with polluted foot, giving gifts. Having abundant gold, he will also gather more silver from his enemies and strip and undo them. He will participate in all the mysteries of magic shrines. He will display a child as God and undo all objects of reverence. From the beginning he will open up the mysteries of error to all. Then will be a woeful time, because the woeful himself will perish. One day the people will say, your great power, O city, will fall, knowing that the fated evil day is immediately at hand. And then fathers and infant children will mourn together regarding your most piteous fate. Mournful they will raise dirges by the banks of the Tiber. After him, 3 will rule, who have the last day of all, fulfilling the name of the heavenly God, whose power is both now and for all ages. 1, an old man, will control dominions far and wide, or a most piteous king, who will shut up and guard all the wealth of the world in his home, so that when the blazing matricidal exile returns from the ends of the earth, he will give these things to all and award great wealth to Asia. Then you will mourn, doffing the garment of leaders, with its broad purple border and wearing a garment of mourning. O proud queen, offspring of Latin Rome, no longer will you have the fame of your pride, nor will you ever be lifted up, ill-fated one, but you will be laid low. For the glory of the eagle-bearing legions will also fall. Where then is your strength? What sort of land will be an ally which has been lawlessly enslaved by your vain thoughts? For then there will be confusion of all the land of mortals, when the universal ruler himself comes and judges on the tribunal the souls of the living and dead and the whole world. Neither will parents be friendly to children, nor children to parents, because of impiety and affliction beyond hope. Then you will have gnashing of teeth and scattering and capture, when the fall of city comes and yawning gaps in the earth, when the purple dragon comes on the waves, pregnant with a host, and will nurture your children. When famine and civil war are at hand, then the end of the world and the last day is near, and the judgment of the immortal God for the approved elect. First, there will be implacable wrath of Romans, a bloodthirsty time, and wretched life will come. Woe to you, Italian land, great savage nation! You will not perceive whence you came, naked and unworthy to the light of the sun, so that you might go again naked to the same place and later come to judgment, because you judge unjustly. By gigantic hands alone in the whole world you will come from a height and dwell under the earth, in naphtha and asphalt and brimstone and much fire. And you will disappear and will be blazing dust forever. Everyone who looks will hear a mournful great bellowing from Hades, gnashing of teeth, as you strike your godless breast with your hands. Night is equal to all at once, to those who have wealth and to beggars, coming naked from the earth, going naked again to the earth. They cease from life, having completed their time. No one is slave there, no lord, no tyrant, no kings, no leaders who are very arrogant. No forensic rhetoricians, no ruler judging for money. They do not pour blood on altars in libations of sacrifices. No drum sounds, no cymbal, no flute of many holes, which has a sound that damages the heart. No pipe, which bears an imitation of that crooked serpent. No savage-sounding trumpet, herald of wars. None who are drunk in lawless revels or dances. No sound of the lyre, no evil-working device. No strife, no anger in its diverse kinds. Nor will there be a knife beside the dead, but the age will be common to all, key-bearer of the great enclosure of the tribunal of God. And with statutes of gold and silver and stone, be beautiful, so that you may come to a bitter day. To see your punishment first, Rome, and the gnashing of teeth. No longer will Syrian, Greek, or foreigner, or any other nation place their neck under your yoke of slavery. You will be utterly ravaged and destroyed for what you did. Groaning in panic, you will give until you have repaid all, and you will be a triumph spectacle to the world and a reproach of all. Then the sixth generation of Latin kings will complete its last life and abandon the scepters. Another king of the same race will reign, who will rule the whole earth and gain sway over dominions. He will rule by the counsels of the great God without contamination, his children and the race of his unshaken children. For thus it is prophesied in the cyclic course of time, whenever there will have been 15 kings of Egypt. Then, when comes the time of the phoenix of the fifth period, he will come to ravage the race of peoples, undistinguished tribes, the nation of the Hebrews. Then Ares will take Ares captive, He himself will destroy the overbearing threat of the Romans, for the empire of Rome, which then flourished, has perished, the ancient queen over the surrounding cities. No longer will the plain of luxuriant Rome be victorious when he comes from Asia, conquering with Ares. Having done all these things, he will come to the trampled town. You will fulfill thrice 348 years, when an evil, violent fate will come upon you, fulfilling your name. Alas for me, thrice wretched one! When will I see the day destructive indeed to you, Rome, and especially to all Latins? Celebrate, if you wish, the man of secret birth, riding a Trojan chariot from the land of Asia, with the spirit of fire. But when he cuts through the isthmus, glancing about, going against everyone, having crossed the sea, then dark blood will pursue the great beast. The hound pursued the lion that was destroying the herdsmen, and they will take away dominion, and he will pass over to Hades. A final but greatest evil will come upon the Rhodians, and for the Thebians, evil captivity awaits thereafter. Egypt will be destroyed by the wickedness of its rulers. Also, like the men who afterwards fled dire destruction, thrice happy was the man, and 4 times blessed. Rome will be a street, and Delos inconspicuous, and Samos sand. And then later also evil will come upon the Persians in return for overbearing pride. All arrogance will be destroyed. Then a holy prince will gain control of the scepters of the whole world for all ages. He who raised the dead. The Most High will lead 3 then in piteous fate at Rome, and all men will perish in their own dwellings. But they will not be persuaded, which would be much better. But whenever there rises upon all the evil day of famine and pestilence, hard to bear, and tumult, and then again the former wretched Lord will assemble the council and deliberate how he will destroy. The withered will bloom, appearing together with leaves. The floor of heaven will rain on the hard rock, shower and flame, and many breezes on the earth, and an abundance of poisonous seeds throughout the whole earth. But they will act again with shameless spirit, not fearing the wrath of God or men, abandoning modesty, desiring shamelessness, tyrants in fickleness and violent sinners, liars, lovers of faithlessness, evildoers, truthful in nothing, breakers of faith, ingenious at pouring out slander. They will not have surfeit of wealth, but shamelessly they will collect more. Under the sway of tyrants they will perish. All the stars will fall directly into the sea, all in turn, and men will call a shining comet the star, a sign of much impending toil, war, and slaughter. May I not be alive when the abominable woman reigns, but rather then, when heavenly grace comes to rule, and whenever the sacred child, the destroyer of all, destroys the malignant abyss with bonds, opening it up, suddenly a wooden house will cover men round about. But when the 10th generation is within the house of Hades, thereafter the power of the female will be great. God himself will increase many evils for her when she is crowned and receives a royal honor. The entire year will be an age turned upside down. The sun, seeing dimly, shines at night. Stars will leave the vault of heaven. A raging storm with many a hurricane will lay the earth desolate. There will be a resurrection of the dead, and most swift racing of the lame. And the deaf will hear, and blind will see, and those who cannot speak will speak, and life and wealth will be common to all. The earth will equally belong to all, not divided by walls or fences, and will then bear more abundant fruits. It will give fountains of sweet wine and white milk and honey, and judgment of the immortal God. But when God changes the times, making winter summer, then all the oracles are fulfilled. But when the world perished, the earth will sweat when there will be a sign of judgment. A king will come from heaven, who is to judge all flesh and the whole world will forever when he comes. Both faithful and faithless men will see God, the Most High, with the holy ones at the end of time. He will judge the souls of flesh-bearing men on the tribunal when the whole world becomes a barren land and thorns. Men will throw away idols and all wealth. Fire will burn up land, heaven, and sea, pursuing the hunt, and will break the gate of the confines of Hades. Then all the flesh of the dead, of the holy ones, will come to the free light. The fire will torture the lawless forever. Whatever one did secretly, he will then say everything. For God will open dark breasts with lights. A lament will rise from all, and gnashing of teeth. The light of the sun will be eclipsed, and the troops of stars. He will roll up heaven. The light of the moon will perish. He will elevate ravines and destroy the heights of the hill. No longer will mournful height appear amongst men. Mountains will be equal to plains, and all the sea will no longer bear voyage. For earth will then be parched with its springs. Bubbling rivers will fail. A trumpet from heaven will issue a most mournful sound, wailing for the defilement of limbs and the woes of the world. The gaping earth will then show the abyss of the netherworld. All will come to the tribunal of God the King. A river of fire and brimstone will flow from heaven. There will then be a sign for all men, a most clear seal. The wood among the faithful, the desired horn, the life of pious men, but the scandal of the world illuminating the elect with waters in 12 streams. An iron shepherd's rod will prevail, and this is our God, now proclaimed in acrostics, the King, the immortal Savior, who suffered for us. Moses prefigured him, stretching out his holy arms, conquering Amalek by faith, so that the people might know that he is elect and precious with God his Father, the staff of David and the stone he promised. The one who has believed in him will have eternal life, for he will come to creation not in glory, but as a man, pitiable, without honor or form, so that he might give hope to the pitiable. He will give form to perishable flesh and heavenly faith to the faithless, and he will fashion the original man, formed by the holy hands of God, whom the snake craftily caused to err, to go to the fate of death and receive knowledge of good and evil, so as to abandon God and serve mortal customs. For the universal ruler took him into his counsel, first of all from the beginning, and said, "Let us both, child, make mortal tribes, copying our likeness. Now I with my hands, and then you with a word, will tend our form, so that we may produce a common construct. Mindful therefore of this resolution, he will come to a creation bearing a corresponding copy to the Holy Virgin, illuminating by water at the same time through the hands of the elders, doing all with the word, healing every disease. He will stop the winds with the word. He will calm the raging sea by walking on it with feet of peace and with faith. From 5 loaves and a fish of the sea, he will satisfy 5,000 men in the desert, and taking all the leftover fragments, he will fill 12 baskets for the hope of the peoples. He will call on the souls of the blessed. He will love the wretched, who will do good in return for evil when they are mocked, beaten, and whipped, desiring poverty. Perceiving everything and seeing everything, and listening to everything, he will observe the heart, lay it bare for trial. He himself is the hearing and mind and sight and reason of all, who creates forms, to whom everything is subject, who saves the dead and cures every disease. And later he will come into the hands of lawless and faithful men, and they will give blows to God with unholy hands, and poisonous spittings with polluted mouths. Then he will stretch out his back and give it to the whips, for he will hand over the world to the Holy Virgin. Beaten, he will be silent, lest anyone recognize who he is, whose son and whence he came, so that he may speak to the dead. and he will wear the crown of thorns, for made of thorns the crown of chosen men is an eternal delight. They will stab his sides with a reed on account of their law, for by winds shaken by another wind the inclinations of the soul are turned from wrath and change. But when all these things of which I have spoken are fulfilled, then from him every law will be dissolved, from which from the beginning was given in teachings to men on account of a disobedient people. He will stretch out his hands and measure the entire world. They gave him gall for food and vinegar to drink. They will show forth this table of inhospitality. The veil of the temple will be rent, and in midday there will be dark, monstrous night for 3 hours. For no longer with secret law and temple must one serve the phantoms of the world. That which has been hidden was again made manifest when the eternal sovereign came down to earth. He will come to Hades, announcing hope for all the holy ones, the end of the ages, the last day, and he will complete the fate of death when he has slept the 3rd day. And then, returning from the dead, he will come to the light, first of the resurrection, showing a beginning to the elect, having washed off their former vices with the waters of an immortal spring, so that born from above they may no longer serve the lawless customs of the world. First then, the Lord was seen clearly by his own, incarnate as he was before, and he will show in hands and feet 4 marks fixed in his own limbs, east and west, south and north. For so many kingdoms of the world will accomplish the unlawful, blameworthy actions as our archetype. Rejoice, O holy daughter of Zion, who have suffered much. Your king himself comes in, mounted on a foal, appearing gentle to all, so that he may lift your yoke of slavery, hard to bear, which lies on your neck, and undo the godless ordinances and constraining bonds. Know that he is your God, and he is Son of God. Honor him, and keep him in your heart, and love him from your soul, and bear his name. Set aside the former customs, and wash from his blood. For he is not propitiated by your laments or prayers, since he is imperishable. He pays no attention to perishable sacrifices, except when intelligent mouths bring forth a hymn. Know who he is, and then you will see the begetter. Then in time all the elements of the world will be bereft. Air, land, sea, light of blazing fire, and heavenly dome and night, and all days will rush together into one, into an utterly desolate form. For all the stars of luminaries will fall from heaven, and no longer will well-winged birds fly on the air, nor will there be a walking on the earth. For all wild beasts will perish. There will be no voices of men, or beasts, or birds. The world in disorder will hear no useful sound. The deep sea will resound with a great sound of threat. All the swimming creatures of the sea will die, trembling. No longer will a ship bearing cargo sail on the waves. The earth, being bloodied by wars, will bellow. All the souls of men will gnash their teeth with the wailings and panic of the lawless souls, dissolving with thirst and famine and pestilence and murders, and they will call death fair, and it will evade them. For no longer will death give rest to those, or night. Often will they make request to God, who rules on high, in vain. And then he will manifestly turn away his face from them, for he gave 7 days of ages for repentance to erring men through the intercession of the Holy Virgin. God himself showed me all these things in my mind, and he will fulfill all the things which are spoken through my mouth. I know the number of sand and the measures of the sea. I know the recesses of the earth and murky Tartarus. I know the numbers of stars and trees, and how many tribes of four-footed animals, swimming creatures, and birds that fly, and men that are, and that will be, and the dead. For I myself fashioned the forms and minds of men, and I gave right reason, and I taught understanding. I, who formed the eyes and the ears, seeing and hearing, and knowing every thought and sharing the knowledge of all. Being within, I am silent, and later I myself will test and bring about whatever any one of mortals did in secret, coming also to the tribunal of God and telling to mortals, I understand the dumb, and I hear one who does not speak. And how much is the total height from earth to heaven? Beginning and end I know. I who created heaven and earth, for all things are from him. He knows what is from the beginning to the end. For I alone am God, there is no other God. They decree an image, fashioned of wood, to be mine, and shaping it with their hands, a speechless idol, they honor it with prayers and unholy worshipping. Abandoning the Creator, they worship licentiousness, and all have gifts from me, but give them to useless things, and they think all these things useful, like my honors, making burnt offerings at meals, as to their own dead. For they burn flesh, and sacrificing bones full of marrow on altars, they pour blood to demons, and light lamps for me, the giver of light. Mortals pour libations of wine as if to a thirsty God, getting drunk to no purpose for useless idols. I have no need of your sacrifice or libation, or polluted burnt offerings, or most hated blood. For they will do these things to the memory of kings and tyrants, for dead demons, as if they were heavenly beings, performing a godless and destructive worship. Godless ones also call their images gods, abandoning the Creator, thinking to have all hope and life from them, trusting in dumb and speechless things with evil result. They are ignorant of good end. I myself proposed 2 ways of life and death, and proposed to the judgment to choose good life. But they turned eagerly to death and eternal fire. Man is my image, having right reason. Set for him you a pure and unbloodied table, having filled it with good things, and give the bread to the hungry, and drink to the thirsty, and clothes to the naked body, supplying them from your own labors with holy hands. Accept the afflicted, stand by the suffering, and provide for me, the living one, a living sacrifice, sowing now on water, so that I also may one day give you immortal fruits, and you will have eternal light and unfading life, when I test all by fire. For I will melt all things and separate them into clean air. I will roll up heaven, open the recesses of the earth, and then I will raise the dead, having undone fate and the sting of death. And later I will come to judgment, judging the life of pious and impious men. I will set ram by ram, shepherd by shepherd, and calf by calf near each other for trial. Whoever are convicted in the trial because they were exalted, and stopped the mouths of all those that they in envy could equally subject those who act in holy manner, ordering them to be silent, pressing on for gain, will all depart then as not approved by me. No longer will you say in sorrow, it will be tomorrow, or it happened yesterday. No worry about many days. No spring, no winter, no summer, no autumn, no sunset, no sunrise. For I will make a long day forever. Light will be desired. Self-begotten, undefiled, everlasting, eternal, master of heaven in might, measuring the fiery breath. He holds the scepter of thunder with a rough firebrand, and he soothes the peals of deep-sounding thunderbolts. Storming the earth, he restrains the rushing noises, and he dulls the fiery whips of lightning. He contains the unspeakable pourings of showers and storms of icy hail, missiles of clouds and attacks of winter. For they bear witness to each thing that you yourself decide to do and approve in your mind. With your Son before all creation, you shared deliberations with equal breasts, fashioner of men and creator of life. Him you addressed with the first sweet voice from your mouth. Look, let us make a man, like in all respects to our form, and let us give him the life-supporting breath to have. Though he is mortal in all things of the world will serve him. And when he is fashioned of clay, we will subject all things to him. These things you said to the word, and all was done in your heart. All the elements together obeyed your command, and eternal creation was arranged for a mortal creature. Heaven, fire, earth, land, sea, and sea current, sun, moon, chorus of stars, mountains, night, day, sleep, waking, spirit and motion, soul and intellect, skill and voice and strength, and wild tribes of living creatures, those of swimming creatures and birds, walking creatures and amphibians and serpents and things of double nature, for all things were arranged spontaneously under your leadership. In the last times he changed the earth, and coming late as a new light, he rose from the womb of the Virgin Mary. Coming from heaven, he put on a mortal form. First, then Gabriel was revealed in his strong and holy person. Second, the archangel who addressed the maiden in speech. Receive God, Virgin, in your immaculate bosom. And thus speaking, he breathed in the grace of God, even to one who was always a maiden. Fear, and at the same time, wonder seized her as she listened. She stood trembling, her mind fluttered, while her heart was shaken by the unfamiliar things she heard. But again she rejoiced, and her heart was healed by the voice. The maiden laughed and reddened her cheek, rejoicing with joy and enchanted in heart with awe. Courage also came over her. A word flew to her womb. In time it was made flesh and came to life in the womb, and was fashioned in mortal form and became a boy by virgin birth. For this is the great wonder to men, but nothing is a great wonder for God the Father and God the Son. The joyful earth fluttered to the child at its birth. The heavenly throne laughed, and the world rejoiced. A wondrous new shining star was venerated by Magi. The newborn child was revealed in a manger to those who obey God. Cowherds and goatherds and shepherds of sheep, and Bethlehem was said to be the divinely named homeland of the Word. Be humble in heart, hate bitter power, and above all, love your neighbor as yourself, and love God from the soul and serve him. And therefore we are also of the holy heavenly race of Christ, and are called brethren. Having a remembrance of joy in worship, we walk the paths of piety and truth. We are never allowed to approach the sanctuaries of temples, nor to pour libations to statues, nor to honor them with prayers, nor with delightful scents of flowers, nor with gleams of lamps, nor even to embellish them with offerings, nor with the breaths of incense sending up a flame on altars, nor with libations from the sacrifice of bulls, rejoicing in gore, to send blood from the slaughter of sheep as a propitiatory offering for earthly penalty, nor to defile the light of the sky with smoke from burnt offerings and polluted breezes from a fire that burns flesh, but rejoicing with holy minds and glad spirit, abundant love, and hands that bring good gifts, with gracious psalms and songs appropriate to God. We are bidden to sing your praises as imperishable and pure from all deceit. God, wise begetter of all. The Sibylline Oracles, Book 11. World of widespread men, long walls, great cities, and innumerable nations of east, west, south, and north, divided in many diverse languages and kingdoms, to you I'm about to speak the most disastrous tidings. For from the time when the flood came upon the men of old, and destroyed that generation with many waters, the universal ruler himself furnished another race of restless men, who, in opposition to heaven, built a tower to an awful height. The tongues of all were loosed, but on them came the wrath of the Most High God, hurled down, and the wondrous tower fell. For they aroused evil strife against each other. Then also was the 10th generation of articulate men. From the time when these things happened, the entire earth was divided between diverse men and all sorts of dialects, of which I will tell the numbers and name them in acrostics, according to the first initial, and I will reveal the name. First, Egypt will receive royal dominion, outstanding and just. Then many counseling men will govern in her. But then a terrible man will rule, a very mighty skirmisher. His name will have the letter of the acrostic, swords will he extend against pious men. While he wields power, this great sign will be in the land of Egypt. In great glory she will then feed with corn people who are perishing by famine. The same man, prisoner and judge, will nurture the east, and the race of Assyrian men know his name, of the measure of the 10th number. But when the affliction of 10 plagues comes upon Egypt from shining heaven, then I will again proclaim these things to you. Woe to you, Memphis! Woe, great kingdom! The Red Sea will destroy a great multitude of you. And then when the people of 12 tribes, bidden by the Immortal, leave the fruitful plain of destruction, and God himself, the Prince, gives a law to men, then a great spirited king will rule the Hebrews, one who has a name from sandy Egypt, a man falsely thought to have Thebes as his homeland. But a terrible snake will love Memphis and will devour many things in wars. In the 12th decade of revolving kingship, in the 17th centuries of years, when 5 more are left, then will be the empire of Persia. Then there will be darkness upon the Jews, and they will not escape famine and pestilence, which is hard to bear on that day. But when a Persian rules and leaves the scepters to the sons of his grandson, as the years pursue the cyclic course, for only 5 times 400 and 100 in addition to these, you will complete 100 enneads and make amends for all. Then Persia, you will be given as a servant to the Medes, perishing with affliction through mighty war. Immediately disaster will come upon the Persians and the Assyrians, all Egypt, Libyans and Ethiopians, Carians and Pamphylians, and all other mortals. Then he will give the royal empire to the descendants, who again will lay waste races for many spoils, ravaging the entire earth without sympathy. Mournful the Persians will wail, dirges by the Tigris. Egypt will moisten much earth with tears. Then a very rich Indian will cause many evils for you, Median land, until you have made amends for all which you have formerly done with shameless spirit. Woe to you, Median nation! Thereafter you will serve Ethiopian men beyond the land of Merios. You will complete 100 years from the beginning, wretched one, adding 7 to these, and you will place your neck under the yoke. Then thereafter there will arise a dark-skinned, grey-haired, great-spirited Indian prince, who will cause many evils to the east through mighty war, and he will damage you, or rather destroy you beyond all. But when he reigns 20 years and 10 plus 7 and 10, then every nation of the royal empire will rage and display freedom, abandoning slave blood for 3 single years. But he will come again, and every nation of men will place its neck under the yoke for the mighty one again, as it was formerly subject to the king, and it will willingly be subordinate. There will be great peace throughout the whole world. Then a great man will be king over the Assyrians. He will rule and persuade everyone to speak according to his mind what God disposed in laws. Then all the kings will fear this man. They who plume themselves with spears, fearful and speechless, exceedingly mighty, lovely to behold, will serve this man through the plans of the great God. For he will persuade everything by speech and subdue everything, and he will mightily build the temple of the great God and the lovely altar, and he will cast down idols. He will gather tribes in the generation of the fathers, and infant children into one place as settlers, and build a wall around them. He will have a name of the number 200, and will show the signs of initial of 18. But whenever he prevails, as decades pursue their cyclical course, for 2 plus 5, coming to the end of his time, there will be as many kings as tribes of men, as clans, as cities, and as islands, lands of the blessed and fields of shining fruit. But there will be one great king over them, a leader of many. Many great spirited kings will yield to him. They will give to him and his sons and prosperous grandsons portions of the kingdom for empire until 8 decades of decades and 6 single years. In addition to these, he will rule even those who are his opponents to the end. But when a strong wild beast comes with mighty ardors, then for you also, royal land, will wrath spring up. Woe to you, Persian land! How many effusions you will receive of human blood when that man of mighty spirit comes to you. Then again I will proclaim these things to you. But when Italy produces a great marvel for men, a murmuring of infants by an unpolluted spring in a shady cave, children of a flock-devouring beast, who, when they have become men, will cast down headlong many who have shameless spirit on 7 strong hills. Both number 100, their names will show them a great sign of things to come. They will build strong walls on 7 hills, and will set up grievous war about them. Then there will be an insurrection of men springing up about you, great land of beautiful corn, great spirited Egypt. But I will again proclaim these things, and in addition you will receive a great affliction in your homes, and again you will have an insurrection of your own men. Now you, wretched Phrygia, do I bewail piteously. For on you will come captivity from Greece, which subdues horses, and terrible war through mighty battles. Ilium, I pity you, for a fury from Sparta will come to your dwelling, mingled with a destructive star. It will especially cause your toils, labors, groanings, and wailings when skilled men begin battle. The heroes of the Greeks, by far the best of those who love war. One of these, a mighty warrior, will be king. For the sake of his brother he will perform most evil deeds. They will destroy the famous walls of Troy, of the Phrygians, when the son of Kronos, for twice 5 revolving years, fulfills the murderous deeds of war. Suddenly, a wooden deceit will cover men around, and the one of deep grief will receive it on her knees, not perceiving that it is an ambush pregnant with Greeks. Alas, how many Hades will receive in one night! How much spoil will it carry off from the old man of many tears! But there will be age's glory in future generations. A great man from Zeus, a king, will have the name of the first letter. He, when he has returned home, will then fall at the hand of a deceitful woman. A famous child of heroes from the race and blood of Astharchus will rule. A mighty and brave man. He will come from Troy when it has been destroyed by a great fire, fleeing from his fatherland on account of the turmoil of Ares, carrying on his shoulders his elderly father, holding his only son by the hand. He will perform a pious deed, and glancing around, he who split the onslaught of the fire of blazing Troy, and pressing on through the throng. In fear he will cross the land and frightful sea. He will have a name of 3 syllables. For the first letter is not insignificant, but reveals the supreme man. Then he will set up the mighty city of the Latins in the 15th year on the depths of brine. Perishing on the waters, he will meet the end of death. But even when he dies, the nation of men will not forget him. For the race of this man will later rule over all as far as the rivers Euphrates and Tigris in the midst of the land of the Assyrians, where the Parthians tarried. It will come to pass in future generations when all these things happen. There will be again a certain elderly man, a bard, whom all call the wisest among men, but whose noble mind the whole world will be educated. For he will write the chief points with power and intelligence, and at various times he will write clearly very wondrous things, having mastered my words and meters and phrases, for he will be the very first to unfold my books. Afterward he will also conceal them and no longer show them to men until the goal of wretched death, the end of life. But whenever these things are accomplished of which I spoke, the Greeks will again fight each other. Assyrians and Arabs, and further quivering-bearing Medes, Persians and Sicilians and Lydians will rise up, Thracians and Bithynians, and those who inhabit the land of beautiful corn by the streams of the Nile. Imperishable God will cause tumult amongst them at once. But an Assyrian man, a bastard Ethiopian, will very terribly come suddenly with the spirit of a wild beast, and he will cut through the entire isthmus, glancing about, going against everyone, and will sail across the sea. Then very many things will happen to you, faithless Greece. Woe to you, wretched Greece! How many lamentations you must make! For 87 revolving years you will be the mournful refuse of frightful war of all tribes. Then again the affliction of the Macedonians will come upon Greece, and it will destroy all Thrace and the turmoil of Ares, in islands and mainlands and amongst the Triballi, who love war. He will be amongst the foremost fighters and will have his name an initial which shows the number 10 times. He will have a swift fate in empire, but he will leave behind a very great kingdom throughout the boundless earth. He himself will fall at the hand of a bad counselor, a spear-bearer, having lived as a leader with fair wind as no one else. Thereafter, the great spirited son of this man will rule of the first letter. There will be a detailed account of his race. Although this man was not born of Zeus or Ammon, all will nevertheless declare him to be and will depict him as a bastard of the son of Kronos. He will lay waste the cities of many articulate men, but the greatest wound will spring up for Europe. This man will also afflict the city of Babylon with pestilence, and every land on which the sun looks in the east. He alone will sail the world. Woe to you, Babylon! You will be in servitude at triumphal processions, you who were called mistress. Ares will come to Asia. He will truly come, and will kill many of your children. Then you will send out your royal man, whose name is of the number 4, fighter with the spear, and terrible arrow shooter with mighty warriors. Then indeed famine and war will seize the midst of the Cilicians and Assyrians. But great-spirited kings will drape themselves in terrible conflict of spirit-destroying strife. But you flee the former king and abandon him. Do not wish to remain, and do not be ashamed to be cowardly, for a terrible lion will come upon you, a carnivorous beast, wild, stranger to justice, wearing a cloak about his shoulders. Flee the man who is like a thunderbolt. An evil yoke will come to Asia, and the whole earth will drink inundating murder. But whenever Pelion, Ares, will establish the great city of Egypt, giver of wealth, and name it for himself, betrayed deceitfully by his companions, he will undergo fate and death. For when he leaves the Indians and goes to Babylon, foreign murder will destroy him about the tables. Thereafter, others will rule each individual tribe. Kings who are devourers of the people and overbearing and faithless for a few years, then a great-spirited leader who will glean all Europe bare. From the time when the whole earth drinks the blood of all tribes, but he will leave life, having undone it by his own fate. There will be other kings, twice 4 men from his race, all of whom have the same name. Then Egypt will be a ruling bride, and the great city of the Macedonian prince, revered Alexandria, famous nurse of cities, glittering with beauty, will alone be metropolis. then let Memphis blame its rulers. There will be deep peace throughout the whole world, and the earth of dark soil will then give more abundant fruits. And then evil will come upon the Jews, and they will not escape famine and pestilence on that day, which is hard to bear. But the ambrosial earth, dark-soiled, with its beautiful corn newly adorned, will receive many dying men. But 8 kings of marshy Egypt will complete numbers of years 330 plus 200. But their race will be destroyed. Not all of them, but a root will grow out. A female, destructive of mortals, betrayer of her own kingdom. But thereafter they will perform evil deeds amongst themselves in wickedness, and one will destroy another. A royal son will cut down a warrior father, and he himself will fail at the hands of his son. But before that he will sprout another plant. A root will shoot up thereafter spontaneously. From it there will be a race that grows on the side. For there will be a queen of the land by the streams of the Nile, which advances to the sea with a 7-fold mouth, and she will have a much-loved name of the number 20. She will make innumerable requests and collect all wealth of gold and silver. There will indeed be treachery against her from her own men. Then again, blessed land, you will have wars and battles and slaughters of men. But when many rule luxuriant Rome, in no respect chosen from the blessed, but tyrants, leaders of thousands and myriads, supervisors of lawful assemblies, and most great Caesars will rule in succession all the days. Last of these, of the number 10, Caesar will rule last, who will be struck in dread war by hostile men and stretch out his limbs on the ground. The children of Rome will carry him in their own hands and bury him piously and pour a mound on him, sharing favor to his memory because of his friendship. But when the end of the time of the age is at hand, fulfilling twice 300 and twice 10 from the time when your founders, the son of the beast, was leader, no longer will a dictator be a limited ruler, but a prince will be a king, a godlike man. Know then, Egypt, that a king is coming against you. He will truly come, a terrible Ares with gleaming helmet. Then for you, widow, there will be thereafter be captivity, for there will be wars which cause evils, terrible and raging in force around the walls of the land. In wars you yourself, suffering mournfully, will flee, wretched one, over the newly slain. Later you will come to bed with the terrible one himself. The conclusion is the joining marriage. Woe to you, ill-wed maidens! You will give the royal rule to a Roman king and will make amends for all you formerly did in wars of men. You will give your whole land as a dowry to a powerful man, as far as India, Libya, and dark-skinned men. You will no longer be a widow, but you will live with a lion, a man-eating, terrible warrior of the war cry. And then, wretched one, you will be inconspicuous to all among men, for you will depart with shameless spirit. A tomb like a circular mound, well wrought, fitted with pinnacles, will receive you alive within it, in a snare, cleverly made. A great people will mourn you, and a king will raise a terrible, piteous lament for you. Then also Egypt of many labors will be a servant, which for many years brought spoils from the Indians. She will disgracefully be enslaved and will mingle tears in the river, the fruit-bearing Nile, because when she has acquired wealth and abundance of all goods, nurse of the cities, she will nourish the race of the devourer of the flocks, of terrible men. Alas, to how many wild beasts will you be servant and booty, prosperous Egypt, lawgiver to peoples? You who formerly also rejoiced in great kings will be slave to peoples, wretched ones, on account of that people which formerly, when it was living piously, you brought to great affliction, of labors and lamentations, and you placed on its neck the yoke of a plough, and you moistened the fields with tears of mortals. Therefore, God himself, the imperishable Prince, who lives in the sky, will utterly destroy you and impel you to lamentation, and you will make amends for what you formerly did lawlessly. At last you will realize that the anger of God has come upon you. But I will go to Pytho and well-built Panopea, and there all will pronounce me a true seer, chanter of oracles, though some will call me a messenger with a frenzied spirit. But when he approaches the books, let him not shrink from them. He will know both all that is to be and that was before. From our words, then no longer will anyone call the divinely possessed seer an oracle monger of necessity. But Prince, now stop my very lovely speech, thrust away the frenzy and the true inspired voice and the terrible madness, but grant a pleasant refrain.